All right. Uh, Welcome to the Jazz Coffee Chat. Thank you for joining us for this first episode on October 24th, 2022. And this is another episode of this is our first episode of the Jazz Mental Health Awareness. Today we have myself, Emily Gumler, Jennifer Whitaker, and John Tucker. Please be sure to share and subscribe to our page or wherever you found this. Now, let's get to the show. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us and tuning in. Today we are going to start our first episode of the JAWS Mental Health Awareness. And so the discussion will involve in this series both myself, the author Jennifer A. Whitaker, and a web designer professional who's on the JAWS Coffee Chat team named John Tarr. So, John, you remember we started our discussion about mental health awareness, and you were talking about the different issues and all that?
Yes, maybe you could refresh my memory again about.
So, like, one thing you named was that it's harder to get help when people have mental health issues, or that sometimes it's even harder for people to even know they have one. We were talking about the difficulty because of different, I forget the word you used, but like basically these labels put on those who are mentally ill. So a lot of people don't want to get the help they need because they don't want to be labeled. And let's say that maybe it has to do with job discrimination because they have those labels or other difficulties in life that come out of that label.
Right. I think even today that a lot of people are very wary of disabilities. And disabilities can come in all kinds of things, from mental disability to physical disability. And I think they cross over many times too. You have like a physical disability, it affects your mental disability. Um, and I think a lot of people are very wary of, number one, admitting that they have a disability until it gets so bad that they can't get away from it. But so in my case, I had a physical disability where I had a hip replacement that became infected, and I went through a lot of operations fighting that. But in the process, and I tried to reach out when was in the hospital on a number of occasions. I was trying to get some counseling for what had happened to me, and it was very hard. There was nobody that the medical association is not really set up because a lot of people get like operations for their heart, a heart transplant, or all kinds of things. In my case, it because I became disabled, um, I I lost my job, or the type of work that I did. I was a photographer and also a painting contractor, and I actually couldn't do either one of those two things. So I eventually went back to school, but I was trying to get some counseling and trying to wrap my head around what had happened to me and how I was going to live the rest of my life. And there just wasn't anything out there. I had to go off on a separate issue and get counseling. Um, but even then, there's a lot of places that are just not equipped to be able to counsel. Um, so I think that's what's happening too.
Knowing
What has
this,
happened? Go
knowing
ahead.
this battle, you're saying that when you became disabled, that there was not any kind of work you could do. What was your path of upon knowing and finding out that you were disabled, that you found a new route, which was, as you said, going back to school. Was that part of the counseling after you went through this struggle to find counseling, or how did that line up with the mental health related struggles that came with your becoming disabled and not being able to do the work you did at the time, the photography?
Right. Well, we had a family photography business, and I had taught my children and some friends on how to shoot photography. I had shot weddings for many years of my life, but I would start teaching some of my family members on how to photograph weddings. So we started a wedding photography business. Um, so I found that I could not get around and do that. You got to be able to move around very quickly and carry some heavy equipment, DSLR equipment, and I just realized I couldn't do that anymore. Two of my daughter-in-law and my son actually still have their own photography business, but it's not something I could do. Then I started trying to figure out what was related out there. How could I go back to school and learn to do a new profession where I don't have to get around a lot?
Where'd
So
that
I
idea
actually
come
went.
from, though? Did that idea come through counseling, or was that something you independently found as being the solution?
No, that was I did independently. I talked to my daughter-in-law who had was involved in some graphic arts and stuff like that. So, but I actually went to my junior college and started looking at what kind of classes and courses and what kind of a degree. And I just it kept coming back to me about graphic design. So I went to a junior college in Arizona called Scottsdale Community College, and I found they that junior college is ranked in the top 10 colleges in the whole United States for graphic arts, and I was like, really? So
And there you went there. Look at that.
yeah, I started going there, and I actually didn't even find out about that. There's a couple 4-year colleges around in the area here, but they don't rank as high as this 2-year college. And they have 3 teachers there that are adjunct teachers that teach part time, but they make a living in the field. And some of the other colleges, when people would get stuck in some of their courses, they would take a course at Scottsdale Community College. So I ended up going to school there for 3 years, even though it was a 2-year degree, because I started taking some other classes like creative writing and also website design. That was not a part of the curriculum.
Did you get it as a minor, or did you just simply study it a little bit?
No, I actually got a degree. I actually followed their whole procedure and I took some extra classes because it was available.
So was the
And
degree in web design or graphic design, or how did they both line up that you studied both, but you got one degree?
it was graphic design, is what I got it in. I learned how to use all like the Adobe products like Illustrator, InDesign, and a couple other ones that Adobe makes. And so I learned all of that. But I actually, like I was saying, I took some side classes that were available to me, and web design was one of them. And they were teaching web design the old-fashioned hard way. And then just before I graduated, I learned how to use WordPress. You're talking, this is back in 2010.
I was wondering because, I mean, the old way is relative, because like I stopped my master's. I finished it in 2011, so we were in college in the same time frame because I went to college starting my freshman year, 03 through my final year of grad school in May of 2011. So if yours is old, mine's old.
Right. And at the time, they were teaching classes where you had to do code and you'd have to build your pages off of code and stuff like that. And that was not my forte. I didn't want to learn IT coding and stuff like that.
Are you talking about
So
HTML and CSS coding?
yeah, using another Adobe product to build websites, and it was just very complicated. And I learned how to do it, and I didn't like it. I realized that was not something I wanted to do. But then I started learning WordPress, where I could just drop and drag, and some of the themes. If you get a theme from a company for WordPress, it helps you to do that. And a lot of the things that really helped me because of my graphic design, and I could use some of the other programs to make a website really stand out and jump out there. But I didn't have to do coding, and I don't have to do coding to this day because I use WordPress. But there's a so that's kind of what happened in there, and I was going to school every day, and I was learning a new direction and new stuff like that. So that really kind of helped me. But in the beginning, there was nobody really there to talk to me.
So how did that play into your mental health struggle while you were in college? I mean, if you had that you were handling at the same time as going back to school.
Yeah, that helped a lot because it kept me busy during the day and a couple nighttime classes too. So I
would you
was
say
able
it
to.
was a productive distraction method because it distracted you from, say, depression or other kinds of mental health struggles? And it gave you
Yes.
something to focus on that wasn't the mindset or the episode of whatever kind?
Yeah, that helped immensely. Um, Keeping my brain, my mind occupied, and also giving me a hope and a future. What was I going to do? Because at the time when I was in school, I was 58 years old. I was like one of the oldest people in the classroom. There were some older people that were learning um, some techniques and stuff like that. But it I'm 70 years old now, and sometimes I think the mental health issue is um, in the profession that I'm in. We're kind of loners. We don't have a bunch of other graphic artists that we're dealing with or website designers. So being connected to a group of people and going back to school. So now I try to join different organizations and I try to help people where we're connecting. So I keep my mind occupied, um, making sure that you stay creative. If you're a creative person, like an artist or a photographer or anything that's very creative, if you don't stay creative and you have too much time to think about things and think about what's happened to you. Because I was also an athlete. I'm a first degree black belt in karate, and so are all my sons. But obviously, when this all happened with my hip, I couldn't do that stuff anymore.
Did
So
you
there
say
was a
you were
lot.
a swimmer too? Because I know you talked about you
Yes,
like swimming.
yeah. I was a swimmer in high school, and I had broken some records in butterfly and freestyle. But I've always swam for exercise, laps and stuff like that. Now where I live, there's this indoor swimming pool where I try to get into that pool. It's about a block away from where we live, and I walk over there 3 or 4 times a week, and I swim laps, and then I walk home on with a walker. So, but I can't really walk a lot. I'm not really good at that. I'm a little unstable, but the swimming pool is amazing for that.
But
So
is
it's
that easier? Are you saying that one good way to cope with, like in your case, a physical disability that impairs the legs and strength, maybe? Are you saying that swimming is something easier to do, like as you compared it to walking and or running and so forth, as far as it being a good method of coping and or a type of job somebody could check out if they have a similar disability that involves their physical movement?
yes, it really is a powerful medium because it really exercises every part of your body. And I try to go about it real logically. How many laps? I also have a torn rotor cuff in my right shoulder, and I found out later that it was probably from when I was swimming freestyle in the old days. So I have changed it now where I do breaststroke and backstroke in addition to the freestyle, but not so much freestyle. So it exercises different muscles and stuff like that.
And how
So
does this change? How does this change affect the ruptured cuff and the pain related to it? These new ones
um,
versus the old butterfly.
um,
Like, are they less painful or are they pain free compared to butterfly with that ruptured cuff?
um, Freestyle and butterfly, the stroke is very similar, so it reacts on that muscle in the shoulder area about the same. I haven't done butterfly in years now because I don't have a kick. You got to have a really strong kick to do the butterfly, and
Okay.
because of my legs and stuff, I can't. The kick helps you to get your top of your upper body out of the water so you can do
Right.
your
You have to like hump it up and go over and down and back up.
right. So I actually swim on two backstroke and breaststroke, which I never did competitively. I always did freestyle butterfly, but I have learned to do backstroke and breaststroke because they're very different and they work differently on the muscles. But it that all really doesn't matter. The fact that you get into the water where there's no gravity and it allows you to put strain on different muscles on your body and your heart, and then you think of about a lot of different things when you're in there swimming. So it really is a godsend for me that we have this pool available, and I would recommend that to anybody. I think people that are depressed don't exercise enough. They don't want to. They don't want to. It just you, like exercising is like the last thing you want to do, but you got to force yourself.
True. I have to agree with that because I'm not sure if you heard recently about how I found this new health insurance that covers me to have a gym membership. So now I can actually go and we have 3 or 4 pools. 2 of them are Olympic size with actually where you can do laps and stuff. And like half of one and half of the third are just they call them leisure pools. You can sit around, get around, talk, whatever. That's not lap pool kind of thing where you're actually swimming laps. And I have to say, I was an athlete like you from as young as 2 years old when I played t-ball and first started playing sports to age 18 when my dad made me choose whether to go to college or to continue my career as a model and my, at the time, babysitting business. And I wanted to be on the tennis team because I had been in high school on the varsity team of tennis and I loved it. But then my dad said, no, you're going to work a job while going to college and learn what it's like to actually earn the money you spend and how to work with an authority, talking about the boss and all that. So anyways, it costed me my physical activity. And I admit what you're saying. In those 8 years of college, followed by give or take 10, 15 years being in the workforce after college, before just this month, October of 22, suddenly I had a means to get a gym membership for free, you know. I had been so depressed and struggling so much that, like you said, I couldn't even motivate myself to even want to go to the gym, even though my little sister was an athlete just like me, 11-year difference. So you're talking about a lot of this time. She was in middle school or high school while I'm going through this struggle. And she'd invite me to go to the gym with her, saying, Jen, you need to just come to the gym with me, get a little exercise and you'll feel better. And I was like, no, I'm too depressed to go to the gym. So I went through what you're talking about. So I'm confirming that a lot of times it's a difficulty just to just simply get yourself to go to the gym or pool or wherever else that you find these opportunities and equipment for whichever physical activity of choice.
Right. And you don't have to swim laps either. You can actually get in the pool, get in to the deeper end where you can walk. And then for me, I can walk across the pool. I'm in about 4.5 feet of water. So it allows me
I think
to,
that's water aerobics, what you're talking about.
yeah, that. So I try to keep my muscle memory on remembering how to walk correctly. So I go in there after I swim my laps, I try to practice my walking again so I don't forget how that works. Um, so it's it's really a big deal because for me, it not only gives me exercise, but I get clean. I get take a shower afterwards, and then I walk home with my walker, and it feels like my brain is clean too. Is the depression it has been cleaned out for that evening anyway. It may come back the next day. I just got to keep myself busy and keep working on what I've got before me, the jobs I've got from web design to graphic arts. And something that I've been doing a lot of lately is Premiere Pro, which is video. So I'm doing that also because it's part of the Adobe suite that I've got. So and then just make a schedule that you're going to do this exercise 3 to 4 times a week. And I try to get there before it gets too late at night. I try to head out over there about 4 o'clock. It's only a block away where I gotta go. I live in a older area that has like a trailer park with double wide trailers and stuff. My wife and I live there in Mesa, and but they've got an indoor pool, so I can swim throughout the winter too. You
Right.
know, so it keeps me going all the time. Um, it's something that we just moved in here about 8 months ago, so I haven't been through the whole winter, but I'm already setting up a schedule that this is what I've got to do on these evenings and these evenings. No matter what else is going on, I've got to make it a priority, even if I don't feel like doing it, because there are times after I've been real busy working on stuff and 4 o'clock rolls around and I'm like, well, maybe I'll skip it and do it tomorrow. I just got to put it in my head and say, go do it. And when I get over there to the pool and I start swimming, I'm really glad I did it. And like I said, it like cleans out my brain, all the cobwebs that are in there and all the bad conversations I've had. I think the major thing is when we're depressed, we have a really bad conversation that's going on in our head with ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I was kind of abused a little bit when I was a kid, and I always had it in my head that I was not good enough. I was not smart enough. I was not physical enough. I was not a lot of things and then when I eventually did get into sports and I excelled, I had to fight those conversations off. And some of these conversations that go on, I still have today. And I go, where's that thoughts coming from? I am good enough. I am good enough to do this. I can write well. I can design really amazing things. And it seems like I'm always competing with myself to prove that people that said stuff to me when I was a kid were wrong. So I think we all go through that to a certain extent.
We do,
Something
because I've got to say, like, I had first, I think it was my second grade teacher that said I wouldn't make it out of elementary, or maybe it was my fourth grade. But either way, it was one of my elementary teachers that said that with my epilepsy and things that were quirky about me that they didn't know at the time was Asperger's or high function autism, that they just saw that I was a failure, and that with my conditions, even though many of them were unknown at the time, just would impair me from ever even making out of elementary. And then similarly, I make it into junior high, and not just into junior high, but I was in honors classes by then. And there were one or two teachers in junior high that said the same thing. And that goes on all the way through high school. And one said I wouldn't even graduate high school. Another said I maybe I could graduate high school, but I definitely couldn't get into college. Well, look at me now with a master's degree. Look how many of them were wrong. And that's very similar, if not the same kind of experience, just for different reasons.
Yeah. Part of my problem, and it's been a problem all through my life, I'm deaf in one ear, and I have been deaf in one ear since I was born. When I was in school in first and second grade, the teachers thought I was retarded. So they actually took me to a counselor. Nobody knew I was hard of hearing or I was deaf. No one knew that. They just knew that when I was in a classroom setting and they would call out or they would say stuff, I would not hear them. So I didn't know what was going on. So the counselor, he started counseling with me, and then he brought me in with a meeting with my parents and told my parents, "Your son is not retarded. He is hard of hearing. You need to take him in and get his hearing tested." And lo and behold, sure enough, I was deaf in one side. So I'm very directional when it comes to hearing. Also, I'm losing my hearing now in the good ear. And one of the things I have found out is if you're really good, if you could hear most of your life and you start losing your hearing when you get older, it affects your cognizant reasoning in your mind.
Do you mean
And
cognitive reasoning?
yeah, your brain has a hard time, even though it may hear some of the words, and you put a hearing aid in, it has a hard time understanding what some of those words are again. It's like it's trying to piece together a puzzle. Um, Today I can hear very well. I have a thing of Bluetooth in my ear, and that really helps. But sometimes when I have to meet with people, I do Zoom or Google Meets. I have to have the caption on there so I can read because it doesn't affect that. So it's just you sometimes have different disabilities that affect you in different strange ways.
But something
Um,
interesting, I think, is that a lot of people, including myself until I met you, don't realize how a physical element, like a physical disability, whether it's your walking, your hearing, or anything else physical, could have such heavy detriments on your mental health. Because if I understand right, your physical, at least with you specifically, John, that your physical restrictions, like your legs and walking and your hearing, are what added to the fire, if not caused you to have the depression. Is that right?
yes, I think there's a lot of things that go on sometimes with my wife and I, since she's 71 and I'm 70. Sometimes, many times, we have a hard time understanding each other. So we've got to talk about things. The hearing aid that I've got actually comes with a hearing aid for the good ear, but it has a hearing device for the bad ear that everything that it hears on that side transmits over to this side. But I've kind of circumvented that so I can hear the TV at night, or I can hear my wife who may be sitting on a couch 10 feet away from me. I give her the other device so she can have it right next to her and talk. And then I can really hear that because it's really important.
Is this another issue of mental health awareness and or medical issues? Is that you can have two of them, but she can't have any of the hearing aids?
Yes, that helped do that. I actually looked into I forget what the word is, but they hook up a device to the inner ear bone in there,
Like
into the
probably
bone
a surgery,
itself.
right?
Yeah, you gotta have surgery for it, but it's a strange thing, and it doesn't always work on people. And sometimes, and to have it, I went in and looked at it, and to have it put into my good ear, um, you have to cut the nerves off, so you will be permanently deaf. And I was not really willing to go to that length to go completely deaf and hoping that the bone transplant or the bone thing would work. So I kind of passed up on that, and I just got a really good hearing device. So I've just learned how to try to circumvent that so I can still communicate with people.
So what's
When I had,
interesting is I was asking about you were giving one of your hearing aids to your wife so she could hear the TV. Is that to say that she doesn't have her own hearing aids?
no, 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 she's got her own hearing aids, and she's losing her hearing in both ears, so she has it. But the other hearing aid that I have uh, picks up the sound and then transmits it to my good ear. That's why they made it, and they gave it to me on my left ear so I could have surround sound hearing, even though this ear was not picking it up. Um, Let me see if I can get it out here.
So is that to say that, in other words, you do that, giving her the one from your, I guess it's your left, so that you
Yes,
can hear her better, or is
it's
that
it's her. Yeah, I can hear her better. It's like a
basically
microphone.
you use it kind of like a mic for her to have
Yeah.
nearby, so you can hear her better when she's at a distance?
Here's two. Okay. Here is the one for my bad ear, and here's the hearing device for my good ear. That goes in there, and you can see it's different. And
It's
then the one
different but
for
the
my
same
bad
at the
ear
same
is
time. They're very similar.
they're similar, but if you look at the thing at the very front of it right there, they're very different.
Oh, one is a
Uh,
speaker little device.
yeah, one is a microphone. Essentially,
That's
what
what I
it
mean,
is,
microphone. You're right.
it's like a high tech microphone, and it transmits it over to my good ear. Uh, and many times when I'm talking on the telephone, this the hearing device works on my cell phone too. It's like a Bluetooth. So that's what I try to do to stay connected. Or if I'm trying to listen to some TV um, in the room with her, I take the other the one that's acting like a mic and I put it right near the TV so I can hear it easier. So, you know, sometimes you just got to work around. You know, there's life is full of workarounds and walkarounds. Especially in the field of web design. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to do a walk around. How do I do this? And WordPress, there's a thing called plugins, and they help you give your website they help give your website more functionality. So that's what you got to do in your own life. Sometimes you're figuring out a plug-in for your own life, right?
I mean, yeah,
So
you
you're
got to
trying
learn
to,
what are the keys to your success, as we could say, right? And a
yeah,
lot of the people with various mental illnesses, whether it's my PTSD, your depression, whatever, a lot of them are told, especially by certain types of psychiatrists, that they can't even have a college degree if they have mental illnesses. I had a doctor that told me that. He's like, why would I believe you have a master's degree when you're mentally ill? He said, you can't be mentally ill and even have a college degree. You can't even get into college with a mental illness. So there's even this
yeah,
whole thing about if you're labeled being mentally ill, you're not capable of working. So a lot of people who get that kind of talk or message when they're young end up not even trying to work because of whatever they were convinced by whomever in their life. And
right.
that's
I
also
th-
part of the reason that a lot end up on a disability check who at least could work part-time like you and me, even if they couldn't work a full-time job. But once they're on that check, they decide they're not going to work at all. Versus like
yeah,
how you and I are trying to do very part-time, that's within our limits, but still having some kind of input into making the world better via our own work of line. My books, your web design and graphic design, the podcast we're doing together, and so forth, right? So we're putting into the world to make it better. But how many people
I,
with mental illnesses just don't even know they can do that at all just because they can't work full time, or they get all these labels and talk about they can't even get into college and maybe never even went to college because of that talk.
right. And it's not just disabilities that we got at a young age. As we get older, we begin to have disabilities simply because we're getting older. So we're trying to keep our brains active and creative. Creative is a big word. How do I do that? How do I do that? When I started doing website designs, I started teaching people how to blog. And you have to learn how to write. I took a creative writing class. My teacher in my creative writing class that I was taking was saying, when you learn how to paint pictures with words, it's a big deal. Um, and you've got to learn how to do that. So I found out that I was actually a pretty good writer, but I wasn't until I was 58 years old that I realized that I could put the words together, and I had a fairly strong command of the English language. But when I went back to school and I desperately wanted to be useful again, I asked God to get me into a field that I could really contribute. And since then, I build websites for not only our organization and what we're trying to do here, but for a couple of different organizations and groups in Africa that are trying to, for women's reproductive rights and stuff like that, to a children's school over there.
Are
And
these current projects or are these things of the past?
oh, these are current. These are what I'm working on now. And I've just connected with a Catholic priest that is dealing with over in Africa. He is in the United States in the Pittsburgh area, but he has written a lot of books and stuff like that, and about the Muslim world that is actually killing a lot of Christians over in Africa. It's not just something that's going on in the Middle East, but it's actually going on in Africa itself. So he's writing a lot about that, but he didn't know how to get his voice out into the world. And I said, a lady by the name of Zeta introduced me to him. So I'm actually helping him to launch his voice into the rest of the world. And that's what a
And
website
just
does.
talking about him, is that the one you were talking about us having as a different series here on Jaws Coffee Chat? Remember we were
Yes.
talking at our meeting?
Yes. I think
So
it
will
would
you
be
tell
great that,
listeners what's the name of this ministry and the preacher so they can listen out to hear announcements about him coming onto Jaws Coffee Chat podcast?
yes, right now he is thinking about a name and he's thinking about a domain name. And then we're going to hook up a website to it. But right now he's thinking about how all that's going to come about. He has written hundreds of blogs actually, but never had them published. He's actually made and written a couple of books, but hasn't had them published. He didn't know how to do this, and I know how to do the part to get them out into the rest of the world. Hook up the SEO, search engine optimization, for all of that, and then.
So does that mean that that's one of those you wanted to hook up with me to also help him get his books published?
Yes.
Okay.
This
So
is
that
one.
means to y'all listeners that upon this process, this guy's books will be available on our website under the bookstore link at Jen's, JENNS, booksandmore.com, which you can also reach by going to Jaws Coffee Chat, that's JAWS coffeechat.com, and selecting the bookstore menu on the top.
Right. So it's a big deal. We can have a lot of thoughts, and I think that's why you thought about what do I need to make this thing go. And we talked about it. My forte was in the graphic design and website design. How do I get that functioning? And I always recommend off your website that you blog on it. Okay, you can call your blog something different than a blog, but the blog actually does a lot of SEO and gets your message out there too. And we're gonna when we on our blog itself, we're gonna have a talk about who our next guest is going to be, who they are, a photograph of them, um, and then at some point in time, we're going to take a transcript from some of the conversations and the podcasts we've had, so people can actually read the discussion, because not everybody's really good at listening or hearing. So that's where the transcript's going to come in, and we're going to have a transcript on the blogs too. So the blog is going to be a really busy thing at some point in time.
Remember, listeners, that on jensbooksandmore.com, you'll find it under the newsletter menu, where all these blogs post, the transcribed messages, and so forth that John is talking about. They will be on the newsletter link or page if you go to Jens, JENNS, booksandmore.com.
Right. So it's a big communication device, because a lot of times on your website, on your different pages, you can put a lot of information in there, but on your blog, you're sometimes putting similar information, but much more detailed on there. And that gives you the vehicle to do that with. And it's very important. And it also keeps all your listeners and followers up to date on what's happening. And then you can then take your blog post and then copy and paste it into your social media. So your blogs are being published in social media all the time too. And one of the devices that we're hooking up now, presently hooking up, is every time we publish a blog, it will automatically send out an email to all the people that we've collected emails from, or people can go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, and it will put them in there automatically. And then
what about the podcast episodes? Are you going to do the same for us?
Yep, same thing. And one of the big things is one of the things that really makes a blog work is having good titles on your blogs. Right now, we just have 4 blogs posted up on the website because we just started with that. But we're going to really put a lot more in there. And there's a lot of things that we've got to hook up and get functioning. But it's really going to take off. There's going to be a lot of things that will be automated that we don't have to worry about. Things like Hootsuite, we will hook up to social media, so it will automatically post up and do things like that. So we've got a lot of things headed this way, and we've got a team of 4 of us. I feel really comfortable with, and I'm very happy about who we've got. And right now, we're trying to find somebody that knows a lot about social media that will help us get that functioning and running properly, because that's like a full-time job right there, trying to get that baby going. So I'm glad you put the website up there so we can read it now.
Yeah, I'm trying to make everything as visual as I can with this, with certain stuff.
I did put the website up on the screen. So
that was you?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell if it was you or Kurt because Kurt was already here.
No, I put it up there.
Awesome. Good job. And here's, if you believe you're a social media candidate for the role, where to go to get on our calendar and to have a meeting with us. One or more of us will be there with you to ask those questions and to see what kind of work you can bring to the table, how many followers you already have / subscribers, to see how well you've already presented yourself on social media. But if you're interested in the role, please go to the link you see on the screen, calendly.com/jensbooksandmore. That's calendly.com/JENNS books and more. So go ahead, John, with what you were saying.
So I think that's going to be a big deal, because I think what we're trying to do here with our podcast is trying to get a lot of people involved. keep us occupied, keep us talking about relevant things that are going on, things that have affected each one of us separately. And how can we uh, figure this out? How can we help other people, including ourselves? You know, the
True.
very fact that I'm in here and I'm talking with Jennifer, and her and I are going back and forth and talking about our different disabilities. I no longer have an angst in my heart about letting people know that I have a disability. Something else that's helped me a lot too is a part of a church I belong to. I'm in a 12-step program, and once a week I get together and we talk about different things. It's basically for men about different things that have happened to them that affected them, and we're just trying to become better men, better fathers, better husbands, things like that.
You brought me
Sometimes
a question though, John. So are you saying being on this podcast where you and I can interact regularly and or being on the team where we have our meetings is how this project, you quote Jen's, helped me? Is it through the interactions of like on our podcast and our online meetings? Or is part of it also the keeping busy with the different work you're doing? Maybe all of it?
I think it's a combination of different things. Um, and it's very interesting sometimes if I'm having a depressive situation in an area. I have, and I'll be really honest about my disabilities, I have anger issues, okay? And this is where the thing that I go with the men's group really helps because I find out that anger issues is a real typical problem for most men for whatever has happened to them as a kid and growing up. If they got addicted to like alcohol or gambling or whatever, and they're trying to figure out things, and they finally end up in our 12-step group. And I don't mind talking about this sometimes too. And there's a couple of leaders in there that might be a good thing for us to uh, bring in and interview too. Um, that really help us to understand what has happened to us throughout our lives and as kids. How do we become a better person? How do we become, like I said, a better father, a better husband, a better
Are these, you said at church, are these spiritual things that we should have on Jaws Christ Talk, or are these mental health people that we should have on here? That's the Jaws Mental Health Awareness.
both? Both, because some of the 12-step thing is a offshoot from AA, Alcoholic Anonymous. So their
Right.
book and their 12-step is very similar, but it's more directed. Ours is more directed for spiritual. But the whole thinking is correct. It's like having you go through and unpeel the onion from your past, who you are. What did it make you be like this? And then when you understand that, I think it really alleviates a lot of the background noise and anger that you have. Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to say things that will hurt people, especially when my family, uh, you know, and sometimes disabilities cause you to be more angry also because you get angry at the world. You get angry
Well, that
at God
can be an
too.
actual condition too, or an episode that portrays anger, such as bipolar, the mania. That's not actual anger, but it comes out as rage, aggression, and other signs of anger. But that doesn't mean the person's actually angry versus they're having a manic episode.
Right.
And similar is with PTSD that I go through with what we call the fight mode, like the aggression where the mood is too high as opposed to flight where it's too low.
Right. And I think that might be one of the things that we can. How do we figure out what you have exactly? Where is your anger coming from? Is it part of that? Because I know there's a lot of military people that have disabilities and they've gotten very angry. So what is affecting them? So they can figure it out. Do I
I
need to
could tell
take
you.
some kind of? do I need to take some kind of a drug to calm me down so I can think, or is it something totally different?
So
I
the number one condition as far as the highest level of diagnosis in military people is post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's that they were traumatized by war or something else related to their service in the military, depending upon what role they played. It could be war, it could be guarding the borders, it could be all kinds of different stuff that had to do with their role. But that's the number one, meaning highest percentage of the time diagnosed condition among veterans, whether they are active or they are retired or they are disabled, whatever role they are, but they're still a veteran. That's the number one most diagnosed. And they actually, one guy who's a best friend of mine, he works for the government now. That's in civil work. But he spent 12 years in the Army until he came back from Afghanistan. He was one of those people in that 10-year war that was over there trying to save lives and actually watching people sitting or standing next to him or behind him fall to the ground dead. And he had to try to pull them back to the vehicles to try to get them to whatever hospital they had on the base or whatever other help he could get them. So he was talking about how he was traumatized by actually watching people die, in addition to other stuff that he actually witnessed while he was physically in the field at war. He wasn't somebody sitting in the back in the intelligence office, you know?
Right.
So he's told me when he was driving, when he first came back from Afghanistan, and he'd be in his car right here in Houston, Texas, on the main interstate driving, he would think he saw somebody with a gun about to shoot him, and it was really the car in the next lane trying to come over into his lane to get in front of him for, let's say, an exit or something. And so that was a hallucination, but it wasn't defined as hallucination. It was defined as being traumatized. And his was, then again, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that's the number one as far as frequency or highest percentage of the time diagnosis for those who returned from military but didn't have the condition before serving.
But even then, there's a lot of regular people that have had traumatic events in their life.
That's where
That
I fall.
you and I both, we're
Mhm.
trying to understand what happened to us as a kid. If we had parents that were not good parents, or in my case, I was raised in a Catholic family, but I was abused by Catholic nuns, not sexually, but because the teachers, the nuns did not know how to deal with a tough kid like me.
Was it
So they
verbal?
did, you know what?
Was it verbal? Like verbal abuse?
Yeah. They we called the Catholic nuns penguins, but I was abused by them because they were not good enough teachers to deal with a kid with a disability. And so it really affected me. But when you're dealing with children that are that young, and this kind of stuff stays with them all their lives. So, and then you begin to build this conversation that you have with yourself all the way through your life that will affect you. So, how do I get past that? What kind of counseling do I got? So, I think this whole podcast that we're going to be doing here is going to be very helpful for a lot of people.
Well, we're running short on time. Let's see where Emily is, and then we'll pick up there in a week. You and I, John.
Okay, there's Emily.
Okay, you see the time, Emily?
Uh-huh. So, do any one of you have any announcements you'd like to share?
Do you have any, Kurt or John?
No.
Okay, Kurt, do you have any announcements related to World of Ability or anything? Or Disability Channel, anything?
Well, the Disability Channel can be found at thedisabilitychannel.ca. So the Disability Channel is well positioned in social media as well. So it's a great support to the channel to follow the YouTube channel and give a like on the Facebook page for the Disability Channel. It's founded, based, and operated out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And so it's something we're doing here in the States, and with around the world. I'm working on it to make it a worldwide aspect, that there is this function of having television by and with people with disabilities and veterans in every nation of the world in the decade to come. So all the support you can provide to that is great. And World Ability Podcast is always 2 Central, 3 Eastern, noon over there in the Pacific time zone or Arizona time, and so on and so forth. So with World of Ability as well, with the LinkedIn presence and YouTube, Facebook, and all that support there. And there's a lot of shows. We've been doing it for 2 years. Started July 26, 2020. So we've been doing it every week ever since. And we have Ability MK Now radio show, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Arizona time. That is available through riverwestradio.com. Ability MK Now is the show. And with the Happy Neighborhood Project, we are already looking forward to Friday, March 17th, the International Day of Happiness. So put that down in your notes. Make sure you don't miss that opportunity with the Happy Neighborhood Project and the Happy Co-op, Friday, March 17th.
Emily, will you put that co-op event or the Happy Neighborhood International, will you put that in the whatever's that domain or wherever we go for that? Put it in the banner.
That's at the happyneighborhoodproject.com, or the short link for it is hmpabc.com. That's
for that specific one.
I don't know. It would be /IDH. Let me see if they got that operational or if they're working on that. It was up for the last 2 that we had, but let me see what the status is right now as you're asking. IDH, let's see. Yeah,
is it right here what we have from Emily?
Yeah, so really what you can do with the link at this point, they do not have it updated, but you can see a little bit about what it's intended to be through the 2022 version. And then they'll be updating that in the next month for 2023.
And this is do you know what time this is? This Happy Neighborhood Project, that's the international one? And what she said is a Thursday, right?
No, it's a Friday. It's going to be St. Patrick's Day, and it's the International Day of Happiness that we're talking, right?
Right. I just didn't know when it was, and so I'm curious.
Yeah, it's going to be Friday, March 17th, 9 a.m. Pacific, so 11 a.m. Central.
Okay.
And it goes for 6 hours, so 9 to 3 Pacific, 11 to 5 Central.
Hey, Emily, after we finish, Emily, will you add me in the group and the link to that? I'll go that with y'all.
Sure.
Awesome.
And this is March.
And just send me the link in an email, and I'll be there. Do you want to be there, John?
Yes, March 17th, right?
Correct.
Okay, I think I did it this year too, and it was very interesting. It was a long day, but it was very good.
Okay, Emily.
So thank you, everybody who there. So thank you to Jen, John, Kurt for being with us on here. Our next episode of this show is next Monday, October 31st, so on Halloween. Be sure to subscribe to our channel or page where you found us, and check out our website to find out more about books, other podcasts, and more by Jennifer A. Whitaker at jensbooksandmore.com. That is JENNS booksandmore.com. Until next time, we wish you a productive and enjoyable week. So goodbye.